And then if you don't want to pay it, then you don't have to pay it.
Mm. Now, this age thing that you're saying,
It just went live.
you know what you say? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know, I know.
Okay, all right.
I want to kind of catch you in the middle of this conversation here. So this
All right.
age thing that you're saying, which is basically that with time you get more experience, and in anyone's life, and just look at the facts of the history of their life, there becomes a time where you just feel more comfortable doing something like asking for more money or understanding your value and presenting your value and being able to. Now, is there a way of shortcutting this thing, or is it like the whole "no, you cannot be wise beyond your years" thing?
Yeah, yeah. I have an issue with that wise beyond your years business. Um, yes,
Can you learn to know your value and articulate it and ask and maneuver the market
I think some
maybe
people are more. Yeah, I think
accelerate
some
it?
people. Yeah, I think some people are just naturally more confident and more sure of themselves, younger
Mhm.
than others. And that being the case, I think it's probably more likely that they can get to the place where they're willing to ask for more younger, know what they actually bring to the table, as it were. Um, Besides the fact that some folks get started earlier in their career,
Mm.
depending on what it was. Say, for instance, if uh, you work for your family business, and really you started working where you were 9 or 10, doing specific tasks, and you grew up in the business, as it were. You're going to get to a place where you're going to feel um, pretty confident about what you're able to do, probably earlier than someone that you know they went to college, then they went and did a master's degree, and then they got a job. Then they're working 5, 10 years on the job. Now they finally feel like they can ask for what they really want. You know, kind of a thing.
Mhm. Mhm. So I'm gonna go ahead and play a little intro here, and then we're gonna get into this conversation
Sure.
about how to ask. Ladies and gentlemen, if you hear my voice, go ahead and share the stream, like the stream. We'll be right back.
in the den of iniquity. Vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment. What's a pity? Tomorrow never certain. What dwells behind the curtain? The face of evil lurking with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble that either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble. Let the dozers gather rubble from LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso. Cannon could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. Hey, I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Microphone check. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder every Wednesday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Today, we're talking about that thing that everybody wants. Dr. Thunder, everybody says they want money. Everybody, no one denies that, right? You can't have too much.
Yeah, money seems to be the thing.
Everybody says that they want it. So how do you go about getting more of it? And so, Dr. Thunder, I'm going to start with the obvious number one. Number one, I'm going to say make a decision to get money. And I want you to see what you think about that. Now, when I say make a decision, it may sound obvious. Like, well, what do you mean make a decision? Seems like the first thing we just said is that everybody wants more money. They know they want it. But that's very different from making a decision in action space. By this making a decision, I mean capturing the information using that concept that we've kind of gone over a number of times by externalizing it. Let's say, in this case, making it measurable and time bound. How much money do I want and by when, and put it in the calendar and putting it in the system. So you've made a decision to save for your retirement when you've actually said, okay, this is how much I'm going to save, and this is the time it's going to take to get to the certain point. I'm going to put it into this particular 401k or pension plan system. It's going to be automated. Boom, set it, forget it. That kind of decision making, as opposed to just vaguely knowing that, of course, I want more. I want to be, I want to go to heaven. I want to do this. I want to do that. But what do you think about the make a decision step as an important one, even though it's almost like it should seem like it's a foregone conclusion? But what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, you do have to decide that getting more money is going to be a priority. I mean, it must be a priority. It's not going to just happen. It's not going to just mystically happen. If I pray for money, then I'll get money. If I hope for money, then I'll get money. Yeah, maybe that's a start, but then you have to actually start walking in a particular direction. I mean, and maybe a simple aspect of it is just not being willing to do certain things that you've always done for the same amount. I mean, you could do something simple like, hey, I've been playing this gig at this restaurant for 10 years and I've never gotten a raise. You know what? Cost of living has gone up, inflation, club is packed all the time. I think I'm going to ask for more money. And it could just be enough money to make it effectively the same as what you were playing for when you started the gig 10 years ago. It could be something as simple as that. But you're not going to just start getting more money just because you want more money.
Good. Yeah, so you got Little Rock out there, or you got Juju out there. She decides that she wants to make more money, so she starts braiding hair of the dusty West Africans in the neighborhood, and that brings in more money. She hides it from the IRS, and then she learns. Maybe the IRS catches her at some point. But yeah, make a decision, I think, is important. So what we've said there is it's got to be measurable and time bound. It's got to be a priority, as you said, and it's not just gonna fall from heaven, from the sky, because you want it. There's a first step that needs to be made. The make a decision step. Let me give credit where credit is due. Is shout out to Grant Cardone. He's the guy that always mentions this one, and it seems like it's one of his tropes. Let's say, for example, I ask you a question, Dr. Thunder, where you're going to list something, and you already know your number one, while you can think of the rest as well. Number one is that first of all you got to make a decision, right? But he also emphasized that no, it is actually quite important, because it's people never actually make a decision. They think they have, though. They haven't. They haven't decided that no, money is a priority. This is when I need the money by. This is how much I think I can get, and therefore I'm going to see how I can increase the value and such and such. But number two, ladies and gentlemen, in this money game, while you click that like button and share this stream where we talk about how and why, okay, and when to ask for more money, is looking at the market, right? So looking at the market. In other words, if you have a job, doing research and understanding what people in your area, your niche, get paid per se, and what value exactly you're bringing to the table that's different from the next 10 other people whom could be interviewing for your job tomorrow if you were to quit or get fired or something like that. But understanding what other people get paid, what are your thoughts about that? How actively do you pursue it? Any tips regarding how one might go about doing this type of market research, understanding your value? Do you perhaps maybe go on little practice interviews every quarter just to go see what people are offering out there in the market? Perhaps because they're not going to tell you perhaps until you go out there, interview, and then get an offer from them. What are your thoughts regarding understanding what the buyers, right, the employers are paying for a particular niche skill-wise?
Yeah. So let's talk about academia. Okay. So one of the common practices, and this sort of touches several points, is if you want to create leverage for a current position, then you apply for positions at other institutions. And then if your current institution wants to keep you, then they'll have to at least match. Or you could actually say, I actually like this deal at the other place, even though they're going to pay you came up to the offer I wanted, but there's this other thing that I want to see changed. If you change that plus match, then I'll stay. So what that does, it does two things. It reminds the institution of what your value is, and the second thing is it tells you what the market value is. It gives you a better understanding of what they're actually paying somebody for that position. Now, you wouldn't have to actually apply for a position to do that, because in academia, at least at public institutions, people's salary is a matter of public record. So you could look at your counterpart's salary at another institution, and then calculate for cost of living and all that kind of stuff based on what part of the country they live in and all that kind of stuff, just to see what you're talking about, what that position actually pays. And a regular thing that happens is the longer you've been working in a particular position, the more the more likelihood and the more possibility and tendency for salary compression. And what that is when your raises over time have not matched the cost of living or a competitive rate for the same position. And so then it is possible and likely that new people that get hired when you've been there for a long time, they're getting paid more than you are right from the jump.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's also an indication of what your value is, because they're saying this is the dollar amount for, we'll say, a tenure track professor or whatever it is. This is the value. This is we have to pay at least this to be competitive to get somebody to take this job. So right, so they're saying that you're at least worth that, and actually you'd be worth more than that because you have more experience, you've done more for the institution, and so, so that kind of thing. So yes, I think you should be aware of what your position is actually worth, what they would have to pay a new person to do the same job. If they wanted to, say if you're working for Google and Facebook wants to hire you, all right, but there's somebody else that's already at Facebook that does a similar job, and they come in and they pay that person more. They just told you that that's actually what your job is worth. They just not paying you it. So now you have to figure out what you need to do to get your money.
Shout out to you, Dr. Thunder, and shout out to Dottie Gal them with the £5. It's a super sticker. I know that it's £5 or £3. Either way, more than $3. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. So, understanding what your market value is vis-a-vis salaries, doing some market research, and understanding what the new people getting hired into your position are being paid, going out there and doing interviews, getting offers so that you have leverage. So we're going to list these particular things that you have to do in this employee space, looking at the market as an employee. And then the question is, okay, well, Dr. Thunder, how do I actually ask, right? How do I go up there and knock down on my manager's door when I know that maybe I am not as top-notch as I could be? Maybe they're trying to get rid of me anyways. Maybe. In other words, these doubts and whatnot in terms of the how. I want to play a little video about that with Jordan Peterson talking about agreeableness versus disagreeableness. If you're agreeable or if you value particular kinds of harmony, which is basically saying the same kind of thing, then you're not going to want to cause a lot of perturbation and be likely to be the first to bring up things that will cause perturbation in the situation. Everyone is always asking, everybody wants money. So money, your manager or your employer in general is being asked for money from all different directions, and it's not an infinite amount of money. You don't want to seem ungrateful. So the first thing to do, if you are indeed in this position, is to be grateful, is to come with an attitude of gratitude. I know that sounds horrible. Sounds like oh my God, sounds like the 700 Club in there.
It was pretty terrible.
Attitude of gratitude. But the point is, this one is just more for you, because, and this is for the agreeable person, because if you have the disagreeableness, in other words, if you're the kind of person that doesn't really care, right, what other people, I don't want to get too complex here, but everybody has the thing for which is the thing that is not to be compromised, right? And it's about knowing that the way you stand in that particular arena, and then taking that attitude and using it in this arena of asking for more money, for example. So taking a stance, first of all, for yourself, if you feel like, oh, am I not an ingrate? Go ahead and have an attitude of gratitude. Put yourself in this psychological state where it's like, okay, cool, I'm not an ingrate. I'm going to come here. I'm actually going to be grateful. I'm actually literally going to say, I'm grateful for my job. I'm grateful for the growth that I've had in the past couple of years. I'm grateful for the opportunity to have this conversation, right? I'm glad you took the meeting. Cut straight to the chase is basically, here is what my value is, specific value, okay, and a specific offer and a specific, and by in another way, I'm going to repeat value in a certain way. You saying here's your value is also like a threat, right, Dr. Thunder?
Yep.
So you got to have that in there too. Like there's got to be the notion that, look, I'm on the market, right? And you got this particular thing right here. It's in your corner. It's fighting for you. This thing being me and my value, right? Here's what it's worth. Here's exactly what it is. Here's what I think. As a matter of fact, you can even go as far as, you have your markets research down. You've probably done a couple more interviews so that you have the confidence. Okay, specific value, specific counter offer. Have a job lined up even so that they can see like, hey, these are the consequences. This is the pain you will face. Let me just mention one more thing about the whole employer thing. The last thing to go is your employees as you dial down your costs, okay? Because it's the hardest to start back up. So first thing you're going to do is maybe, you cut costs on, maybe their travel expenses, or, oh, you guys are not allowed to do this, that, and the other, expense accounts shrink up. You're like, okay, we're going to, whatever all these things you do with regards to cost regulation in times such as the ones that we're in right now, where interest rates are high or the market is in a downturn, typically the employees are the last people to go, okay? So if you're a decent employee, right? If you're not the trash, because the trash goes out very quickly in that time, right? But if you're not trash, if you're somebody for whom it will take time to replace and retrain and get used to their quirks and whatnot, if you're not giving a bunch of grief at the workplace and you're good, they're not trying to get rid of you, right? Because it's a pain to bring somebody in new. No matter how good this new person is, there is just going to be, depending on what the job is, at least a 6-month period where this person is not really bringing value as much because they're basically training, right? But that's a big mouthful, Dr. Thun. I don't know if there's any comments in there that you wanted to make, but I was just kind of rounding out the whole, how do I ask? And I'm about to play a video about that. How do I ask if I feel like I'm an ingrate? Well, go in there with gratitude then, and even say that you're grateful. But prior to that, done your market research, as you mentioned before, such that you have your specific value and the consequences to the employer if they don't recognize your value. Any thoughts if I play this video?
Yeah, I know. I totally agree with that. And I'm sure that listening to the video is going to spark plenty of discussion.
Excellent. So let's see here. We got volume, play.
Things that predicts salary across time, for example, is agreeableness, and it predicts it negatively. And so it's part of the reason why women get paid less than men. And this is something for the women in the class to really listen to, because how you get paid across time depends on a very large number of things, right? It depends on your skills and your abilities and your position and your social network and all of that. But the other thing it depends on is whether or not you actually go ask for money, or maybe that you don't even ask, because actually you don't ask for money. You tell people that you need to be paid more, or something they don't like will happen. And I don't mean as a threat. I mean that you have to be willing, when you're negotiating, to have an alternative. You go talk to your boss, who isn't going to give you money, because everyone wants money, right? It's a competitive game. You're going to have to go there and say, look, here's what I do. Here's why it's useful. Here's why you have to give me more money. And this is my opportunities if you don't. And then you're not taking your boss's money anyways, because it's very frequently the case that he's working for a whopping big company. But he needs an excuse to give you money, because
here's what I do. Here's why it's valuable. It's a very important thing. I don't. Let me say this, and get your thoughts on what Jordan Peterson has said so far. First of all, basically mentioning that, look, agreeableness, the more agreeable you are, the less you get paid. Okay. And that this tracks over time. Hence, you need to know that and adjust for it. And a means towards adjusting for it is something that I mentioned earlier, where I said, even if you're quote unquote agreeable within the space of common, you care about other people's feelings and you want that fairness to be there and a certain kind of a harmony of feelings and closeness to persist. Even if you have that, there are places where you do not compromise. So go find that place. It might be maybe in terms of truth, or I don't know, you don't compromise on your religion, whatever it is. Go find that place, look at the attitude and the stance that you take in that place, and then bring it to this other place. Now, that's a complicated psychological kind of exercise that I just described, but hopefully it makes sense. But the point that Jordan just made about know your value, here's what I do, here's what it's worth. It's something that is not as easy as some people may think. In other words, to tell your employer what your job is worth to him, right? It's something that perhaps one way of doing the shortcut to that place is to really get close to the money, or understand how basically how much of a cost you are or a profit center you are. If you're in sales, you're in the profit center, right? So you can always say, hey, I just closed the $1.2 million deal with Cupertino Electric. So, without me, that would not have happened. So, my worth. I'm bringing in this much. Yes, sure, there's these other things that happen, but a lot of these transactional business that you're even getting that we don't have to work for is because of relationships that I developed in prior years, blah, blah, blah. So getting close to the money is basically the knowing how directly you bring in money or cost money to the company, right? And there is an actual number that the sales and finance people of the company, not the sales, I mean accounting/finance people of the company know, right? They know whether you're a cost center or a profit center, how much of a cost you are, and blah, blah, blah. And I always advise to move towards the money. In other words, move towards sales. Move towards sales, move towards entrepreneurship as much as you can. That really means that in whichever position that you're in, whether it's in whichever field, whichever silo, you're a marketing person, you're a sales type person, you are a engineering type person, you are in the accounting side of things. There are people whom bring in customers, keep customers happy, and are directly tied to keeping that inflow of cash happening within each of those departments. And that's where you want to be. You want to move closer to the position where your value can be exactly. I guess I'm repeating myself now. Well, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. If your job is actually what is actually bringing the money in to the company, that's when you have the most leverage, and that's when it's easiest to say, look, I know how much money is coming in. I brought in half of it. So what I'm asking for is not that big a deal. Now you can pay me, and I appreciate being here all this time, or I can bring half the money to another company and they'll pay me to do it. So that's like an easy thing. The issue though is, for most people, it's not that sort of, there's a lot more nuance, and there's a lot more, let me bring out this spreadsheet and let me show you and talk you through, the intricacies of what it is that I do and why over a 5-year period you're going to be worse off if I leave. Not if you let me go, then I'm going to take this client is going to want to follow me, and that's 25% of the income for each quarter. That's a little more, we know what we're talking about here. So most folks have to sort of dig through a lot of those that nuance. And you know, you got to play politics. And I don't like politics, you know, aspects of politics, you know. And I really don't like it, and I really don't like having to wrestle with folks and dealing with HR and you know administrators that don't really know what you do, and you have to explain to them what it is that you do. Maybe they don't even respect what it is that you do. They have their own biases or whatever, you know, and nobody really, I don't know how many people really enjoy that part of it. Most people just want to do their job. But you know, you have to get to the point where you're like, okay, well, I guess this is what this is. If I actually want more money, then I'm going to have to be able to tell them, be able to show them that I have some sort of value. And you're likely not going to have to, you're not going to be able to just do it once. You may have to do it lots of times over a long period of time. So this is a process. It's not like hey, I'll have this one big time, you know, and I'll have all my charts out and I'll have all of my thing and I'm going to wow him and he's going to just give me the money. I'm sorry. It might not be that.
Like a movie.
Right.
Like, yeah, he showed up with spreadsheets and charts and he could that never works, by the way. In other words, spreadsheeting, charting, logicking, it never works. And what I'm saying here is what we just called politics, and saying you don't like it, which most people are going to be on the side or on the area of where they're not in sales, number one, right? And then they're not going to be able to directly say, well, these are my clients, right? And be like in Mad Men or Suits and threaten to leave and take the core of the company with you. Most people are going to be in that area where they're going to need to dig in to facts and figures or whatever in order to quantify or their value somehow, right? Now, those people are going to need to learn the art of persuasion, which is just another way of saying politics again, which is inevitable or whatever, but which comes down to this simplicity question of like, it's never going to be the spreadsheets, by the way. If you need to do the spreadsheets in the background, and then you need to come up with a simple and exaggerated kind of a claim where you're like, look, this is what the accounting department saves you, right? It saves you 50% on X, whatever it is. Maybe it saves 15, but ideally it could save 50 if certain things were calibrated just right. You know what I mean, Dr. Thunder? Right? But you just say 50 because you know you have a model calibrated somewhere that says 50% of it will cost you more if you were to use these other options that you think are cheaper. I know you think that you can just get QuickBooks Pro and get rid of me and then pay this particular tier thing because QuickBooks is telling that they have AI. But let me show you how much we pay or how much you save on RFIs, whatever it is, some process, right? That QuickBooks doesn't necessarily solve. And have that number and have it such that you can deliver it in one sentence. A one sentence rule. If you can't tell me if you cannot say something in one sentence, then what the hell are you saying, right? That one sentence could take a whole library to unpack, but you need to be able to tell me what this thing is about in one sentence, right? If you need 3 sentences to describe, hey, what do you do, Dr. Thunder? And you need 3 sentences, you can't just say music. Like, then what the hell? What the hell are you? You know, there's some BS going on, right? So that's that. My point there is on this side of influencing people, selling people something, which is looked at as politics. Okay, if you look at it from a particular kind of a point of view of, and you like to navigate this space, which I like to do that in terms of selling, getting close to the money, understanding how to navigate politics in my way such that it avoids all the BS that I don't like, right? Then you just realize that the communication aspect is huge, and it's not, you don't have to get into all the nasty feelings which you don't like or the backslabbing or the back rubbing or the whatever, all the stuff we don't like about it. You can get past that by understanding that, look, it's coming in with a simple, big claim that you're going to lay out in front of somebody that is a value, and where the pain is clear, and we can then it's what I said is simple, but then you're like, this is what salespeople spend a whole lifetime trying to perfect, right? Is this ability to really show people something. And it's not the spreadsheets, because people don't get moved by spreadsheets. You get moved by images of the future, either a great future with you in the accounting department or a horrible future where, you know, things suck, right? Those are the things. And these things are not created by spreadsheets. These are images you have to put in your head, like a block, right? Before I keep on going on and on, maybe I'll play a little bit more video, or did you have something? I was just responding to the things that you laid on the table.
Yeah, I like this. The image thing is interesting, because images aren't necessarily specific things that you're specific pictures that you're drawing. It could be playing into a certain insecurity or personal desire that your boss has. So if you're going to leave and take 25%, or even if it's taking 10%, they don't want to have to sell back that Lambo that they just bought.
Boom. There you go. Perfect. You captured it perfectly. That is how decisions get made. This is how people are moved. You're not moved by the other thing too, because I just recently watched a podcast, by the way, where this particular kind of concept came up. And there are people who also think that people are moved by ideals. In other words, there's some people who think they're going to be moved by spreadsheets, like, you know, I'm going to show them facts. And then there are people who think they can move by ideals, like, I'm going to tell them it's about human flourishing. It's like, no, you got to give them, you know, like, it's like, what the hell? It sounds good to you in your speeches, you know, and yeah, we shall then, you know, the shining hill on the whatever. Yeah, you know, while that pomp and circumstance lasts, sure, they feel good and they wave the flag, whatever. But they're not going to make decisions based on that. You got to give them a real selfish vision of themselves in the future, whether it's a good one or a bad one, and then have them choose, right? That's it. That's what people want.
You know.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue this video here with Jordan Peterson. Again, how do you ask for more money? We're still looking at the employee side, employee side of things. You have researched, you know your value, you know what other people are getting paid, you know what they will have to pay a new person to take your job. Now you're coming in with your disagreeableness, meaning that you're willing to say things that will ruffle feathers and bring up the topic of money and try to use the leverage to pull it out of someone. Let us continue.
Everyone's asking for money all the time. And so you have to put your case forward powerfully and disagreeably. Now, you don't want to do it too disagreeably, because then he's going to think that you're a son of a bitch, and maybe he's not going to give you anything, and maybe you'll get fired for being mouthy and all of that. And that certainly happens to people who are too disagreeable.
Mouthy
You got to
women.
get the balance right. But it's definitely the case. And the other thing that happens to women that's also worth noting, and this is probably because they're higher in negative emotion, is they tend to underestimate their own utility in business settings, right? Because if you're trying to evaluate what you're like, and you're more tilted towards negative emotion, then the things that you do that are wrong are going to stand out more on the foreground than the things that you do that are right. So if you go into a negotiation and you're uncertain already because you have self-doubts, and then you're agreeable in the negotiation, what's going to happen is that you're not going to win as often. And winning in a business setting or in a career development setting means more opportunity for promotion and more revenue generated. Now, the downside of that, of course, is as you climb the business hierarchy, is that you also have to take on more responsibility. And that responsibility is sometimes unpleasant as well, especially to people who are agreeable, because you're not necessarily liked if you're in a position of authority. And agreeable people really like to be liked. It's their primary motivator, because they're concerned about the maintenance, I would say, of intimate, positive relationships. And that also makes them conflict avoidant.
All right. That was quite a bit there. I want to see what you think about what he mentioned there about climbing the hierarchy and then the consequences of that. So first of all, you're an agreeable person. You like for there to be harmony. Then you know, but however, that, hey, you know what? This particular characteristic of mine is negatively correlated to money, so I'm going to need to do something about it. I need to become more disagreeable and ask for money in a particular way. But as I rise higher up in the organization, there's even more politics. In other words, more of this thing that I don't like, and responsibility and feather ruffling. And then, so what do I do? Now, I have a simple solution for this. Goes back to my whole kind of go close to the money, go close to the entrepreneurial side of things. Because in sales, there is no hierarchy. There's just a balance sheet. Okay.
Right.
There's the money you brought in, right? So sales is not political in that sense, right? Which is a beautiful thing. Now, when I say sales, I mean moving towards more in that sales direction. In other words, moving towards more what perhaps some fields may call customer facing, getting out there whereby your particular skills and your personality becomes impactful in the market, where people are more likely to buy from my company X because Jenny goes out there and does marketing outreach and such. Jenny has these relationships, as opposed to Jenny is in the back office just doing spreadsheets, right? And there's no direct sight with regards to the relationship between Jenny and my customers. So moving more towards customer facing, where people can see more the direct link between you and the customers, you and the bringing in of the money, is key here to stepping out of where politics is needed. So ultimately, my advice is go towards where the politics is not needed. And my representation that I like to give, that I give a couple of times, and I was watching a movie, well, it was an anime the other day, and this kind of trope of here's a general, and then here's this other high level. There's two high level guys. I don't know. They went to college together. They were the most badass guys in West Point. One's a general now, and the other one is some captain of a squadron, like a special force type person. He is the guy he still goes out in the battle, right? He's out there. He's in the front line. He fights, right? What you want to do is be the fighter, what I call the captain guy. You're gonna have autonomy, okay? You're gonna be an expert. You're gonna have a lot of pull, sometimes more pull than the general may have in terms of people listening to what the hell you're saying, right? The general has to play politics, but what the hell does this Captain X of our most baddest special force captain that we all know, right? We all know, everybody who's in the know knows that without him, we can't do nothing. We ain't ish, right? Be that guy, right? Now, it's a steep hill to climb, but you'll be clear of the politics that the general has to deal with, okay? Anyways, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So wait a minute. I lost my train.
Yeah, I went all over the place there.
Yeah.
But let me give shout out to Bob. Clearance are further away in the department companies. Okay. I'm gonna say that, and then I'm gonna maybe lay down the last part of the trail of what I kind of reacted to there, because ultimately what Jordan Peterson said that I found interesting at this last section here was the moving up within a company and then having to face more of that thing you don't like, right? Of the politics, feather ruffling. And I was saying that there is an area where you can completely avoid that. This dichotomy always comes up anyways, where I talk, for example, like going into the lab as opposed to going to the United Nations, for example. You go to like there's going to be more politics in one versus the other, right? And I was just saying that basically, and it's kind of dovetails with the question that he's asking here, moving towards the money, right? In the or being the guy that still fights in the field with your squadron of special forces elite guys gives you way more leverage than just being a general type. In other words, climbing the hierarchy, because the hierarchy is bound in all kinds of rules and traditions and this and that and checks and balances. But if you are peak special forces guy, you have a lot of autonomy and you have a lot to say. You'll say, hey, we can make this happen. I can go in there behind enemy lines and we can bring back this crap, right? And they know that everybody knows that. Anyways, so Mr. Bob, thank you for the super chat. Basically, if you're in the engineering department, if you're in the accounting department, right? If you're just like a computer, if you're something that can be easily replaced by AI, then you're not close to the money. Okay. Now, within that department, you can then branch out and look and say, hey, who in this department talks to customers? Is it the manager? Who influences? Who is out there having a relationship with the salespeople and talking to customers and helping with the presentations and blah blah blah, they're closer to the money in your department. The sales department is the closest to the money, right? The guys, the salesmen, and then the furthest away is anything that is like just like data entry, AI can be replacing it. I hope that helps. But Dr. Thunder, what are your thoughts here about this dichotomy of you can go and be a general, or you can be the character that I like to call Captain Levi, who is going for autonomy. He becomes an expert, and he has a lot of autonomy. He has a small squadron. He still fights battles, and because of that, he has a huge amount of leverage, but still a huge amount of autonomy.
Yeah, I mean, I prefer the last than the former, because the former seems to be more married to the institution, so then therefore has less flexibility with what they can do. The latter also seems to be, you could almost put them, I mean, they could almost be a mercenary and go where the money is, as opposed to sort of being stuck. I don't know if I'm answering the question that you're asking me.
No, you're answering it perfectly.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Because let's shift now to just looking at yourself as a seller of a good in a marketplace where there are buyers. So far, we've been putting this whole thing in the context of employer-employee. Okay, you have a boss. He has demands on him for money. How do you make your value known? In which department are you closer to the money than you're not? Blah, blah, blah. Keeping it in that context. All right. And we ended that by saying, look, know what you want to do, because if you want to go up this path of developing your disagreeableness and fighting people, you can get into this, I'm a general in a political trap, or I've risen to the top of the hierarchy. Now I'm the same as an institution. If you don't have that kind of a spirit, if that's not what motivates you, which I can say for one, I don't have that motivation at all. I don't want to climb a hierarchy other than one of my choosing. Okay, it's an introverted thing. I am highly competitive, but not with the outside world per se, right? So know that, and don't get yourself get trapped in this office politics of climbing, and that the path outside of that is to go close to the money or become Captain Levi or whatever. That thing that where you're bringing value, that's independent, that can be measured, and that there is no question, right? It's like it's clear. But anyways, now, Dr. Thunder, when I'm talking about looking at yourself as a market actor here, you're a market actor, and on the one hand, there is rareness, and on the other hand, there is commonness. Common is cheap. Okay. Another way to put it is you want to be a monopoly. Okay. If you're rare enough, you're a monopoly and you set the price, right? Again, we're talking about how to ask for more money. A monopoly can ask for more money. On the other end of things, Bob, you have perfect competition, right? Where everybody is the same. And in perfect competition, the minute I ask for more money, I get undercut by the guy next to me, right? Because there's no choice. You want to go towards becoming more of the monopoly. Your goal is to be a monopoly. Don't be fooled by thinking that the narrative that says that competition is great is true in all levels of analysis. Competition is great if you want prices to be low. That's it. Okay. If you are the guy actually in perfect competition, can't raise you can't add 50 cents to the plate of chow mein, that you charge for your restaurant, because you'll get undercut by the next chow mein restaurant. It's not very great, Dr. Thunder, is it? You don't want to be the guy that's like squeezed, 25 cents on the left and the right. You can't breathe because of perfect competition, right? So it's not some kind of a dogma that competition is great. As a matter of fact, looking at yourself as a unit, as an independent unit, economic unit, you want to become a monopoly, meaning you have this niche which you've completely cleared out, and you can therefore say what goes as a price in there. What are ways, Dr. Thunder, of looking at yourself, helping, in other words, getting more niche, skilling up, really understanding how to become more rare so that you are more like a monopoly than just another cog on the wheel?
Yeah, this is interesting because there's a lot of sort of artistic, examples that you can use, because you have artists that are very skilled, but they're not necessarily unique. They're just very good. And then you have folks like, say, Miles Davis, who's very unique, and regardless as to if he was technically proficient or whatever, there's only one. And so that means that he can say, you got to pay me whatever I want, or else I ain't doing it. Versus someone that plays very well, but they're not necessarily unique. They can just say, well, you priced this out, somebody undercut, we're going to give it to them. Right? And we don't like this like cult of personality thing. We don't like the, especially when we start talking about politics. There's like a criticism of that. But in this sense, what we're talking about, we absolutely want a cult of personality. Right? It's you. You want to be recognized and identified as completely and totally different. You want people's allegiance to be to you because you can do something that other folks can't do. You can think of this as in this sort of, one of the things that I like about, for instance, what I'm doing on YouTube is you're creating a community. We're creating a community, and we see a lot of the same people, and they recognize that what it is that we say, our approach to things is different than other folks' approach. And so we capitalize on that as much as we can, right? And that's why people would come back. They don't come back because we're proficient. I mean, that may be a reason that attracted them. But once you have them actually coming to you because of a sort of community aspect, because of a sort of personality, a style, all of that kind of stuff, now you got it, because they can't get that from someone else. And so as much of that as you can do, you're going to end up being better off. Now, and this can be baked into what it is that you're doing. You may be a person that's proficient. I tend to go for proficiency, excellence, trying to do things well, trying to communicate well, trying to improve all the time. So that can be part of it. But that's not the reason, really, ultimately, that people are going to come and check me out. It's not going to be the reason. And I could cover the same topic as someone else does, and they'll still be just as interested in coming and seeing what I have to say about it.
Yes. Making that connection with people, right? Now, leveraging your identity, leveraging your brand. We did a show on your channel where we talked about, getting to the next level in business, right? And I talked about the business in terms of a couple of attributes. Talked about cadence, and then I also talked about branding, right? That the brand has power, and you have to create this thing actively. It's not just going to happen per se. Well, it tends to happen over time, but you want to definitely have control over your brand. because people see that brand, they identify with it, and then they're attracted to it. They come towards it. They, as you said, yes, your ice is the same as everyone else's, but they want your ice because it's all the brand. Oh, here's the red logo over there. Like, yeah, I'll go to that ice machine because I don't know. It's a red logo. I know Dr. Thunder ice, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but definitely a huge thing in terms of creating a niche for yourself, and kind of making yourself unique. So I 100% agree there. Taking advantage of inflation expectations. What I mean is, if you're in the case, if we step a little bit outside of your direct employee, if you're charging for something, if you have some particular side hustle, Bob's something, Bob's Burgers. If you're selling something on the side, when you're in an inflationary environment such as we're in right now, it's a great time to turn up those prices. Okay. And it's a good time to test the market. There's no linear progression by which it's called kind of like elasticity, where the prices just change perfectly, especially with services, in accordance with the laws of demand and supply in the market all the time. It's like, no, usually these jolts, because typically people have to change their prices. I have to up my price on you, Dr. Thunder. It's not some AI that decides it, right? It's not just like, randomly the price is just changing. Like, no, I have to decide, hey, Dr. Thunder, what used to cost $800 before is now $1,000 for each of these particular things, right? And in order for me to do that, I have to do it not incrementally, but in certain jumps in certain environments, such as now. Now is a good time to ask for more money, especially for services, because because maybe your costs have been going up because of other things down your supply chain in terms of the cost of the goods, or shall I say the input, energy or otherwise, that you put into providing your service. But also because it's just been underpriced this whole time, and you kept it there because you didn't want to jolt things. But in this inflationary environment, it's the time to up the price. Your price of your price of your housing is going up, right? All these bills are going up, this, that, and the other. Well, your price has to go up as well. That's it's fair game if you have the value in the market. What do you think about looking at the inflationary environment and tapping into it, taking advantage of it? Or do you think that's too Machiavellian?
No, I think you have to do that because you're taking a hit. Okay, so you're taking a hit if you know you're taking a hit or not, and maybe you have set things up to where inflation's happening. Okay, so say for instance, if your business is property oriented. So what I mean by that is real estate. Okay, so say for instance you have a house. Now you have a mortgage and you're locked in. It's not a variable rate, right? You're locked in. So you're going to pay the same amount. Doesn't matter if there's inflation, doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters. You're locked in. Okay. And then you say to the tenant, I'm going to charge you more. Right? Now the tenant is like, okay. They're expecting to have to pay more, right? Because they've been listening to CNN and whatever. They know that, inflation is a thing and their rent might get hiked up. But the thing is that you're not, as a business owner, that's not the only thing that you're ending up. That's not the only factor. The fact that you're not paying more, it may seem like you're gouging your client, your tenant, by raising the rent, but you have other expenses. You have other things that you have to deal with, and that stuff is costing you more. So it's not a vacuum sort of, this is not happening in a vacuum. Everything is affecting everything else. So I would argue get as much money as you can whenever you can get it using whatever methods, as long as you're not breaking the law.
100%. Turning up that price on them, gouging them, if you will, Dr. Thunder. Isn't that what the people will say? Is there a steel manning of the gouging argument? Is there something to be said about, well, no, you shouldn't raise it just because your expenses went up, Dr. Thunder, doesn't mean that you just have to suffer it with the rest of us. You don't charge
No,
us more.
that's not. No. That, I mean, you can't do it like that. You just can't do it like that. And maybe people listen to this and they say, well, man, that's, see, that's why I don't like capitalism. Maybe that's the way how they think about it. It's yeah, it's not really, but it's not really that. It's, you have to factor all of everything. You have to look at everything. Now, I do have an issue with some of these corporations that doubled in size over the pandemic because they were doing some questionable things. And perhaps we could say maybe there should be some sort of regulation or something. And I know that regulation is a dirty word, I know, but maybe there should be some balancing of some of that. You could make that, you could make that argument. I would have that discussion. I'd be willing to have that discussion.
Mhm.
But if you're providing a service that nobody else is providing, and that's why you doubled in size over that time period, in providing a service at a lesser price point and convenience, and that's what people wanted. I know it's like your company doubled in size, tripled in size, record profits, whatever. I know that's the case, but everybody else ended up doing better also. Right? People like being able to, sit in the basement, with some corn nuts and order on Amazon in the next morning or something. What it is that they ordered is on the porch. Right. People like that.
Mhm.
So I'm just saying.
Yes. So here is an argument for the monopoly, an argument for profit, maximum profit. Before I get into the argument, I'm going to say that basically what I've said so far, at least what I've said regarding this profit thing, is that you have to know when to turn up the profit dial, take advantage of the market and conditions when there are expectations of inflation. You go ahead and turn it up. People are expecting things to go up anyways, right? And this particular dial is a dial in your cockpit of your business, of your economy, if you will, that you can use in different ways. And you always want to have the ability to increase price. You don't ever want to, generally speaking, you don't want to be at your maximum price that you could be charging, right? Reason why is because it's almost like a little kind of like a starvation training, right? You're not fit if you're taking everything out of the market, if you're constantly taking everything out of the market that you could be taking right now. It's like, how about I charge only 80%, right? And I look at ways to run the company at 80%, lean and mean, if you will. And because obviously it means that I'm more competitive price-wise, right? With other people I'm competing with. So on the margins, it helps maybe win me some extra clients, right? Obviously, everybody knows, turn down price a little bit, get some extra clients. And it helps me to run my company lean. And I have the option to go up. You always want to have that option to go up, right? And there are certain fields, it's called basically price control. Or there's some fields that are areas that are price controlled. Like you got a rent control, you're in a rent control area, continuing with your property analogy, then you don't really have a lot of, you have a cap, right? If you have a steady stream that's capped from the government, you choose that. But generally speaking, you want to be in a service whereby you have a lot of leverage to turn up the price. So that's one thing. Then I'm just going to say a word about this argument about price maximization or profit maximization. Basically, the person came to you, Dr. Thunder, and said, hey, why are you charging me more money? You should suffer with us. If your cost is going up, well, then you should just bear it, and keep our price the same. You just have less of a profit, blah, blah, blah. You see, with profit, comes innovation and comes quantum leaps in, let's say, technological advancements. Okay, and that sounds a little wild, but I'm basically saying that if you have excess profit, Dr. Thunder, you can then expend on research, development, and upskilling of Dr. Thunder 2.0, creating the next Dr. Thunder 3.7 gadget, right? If you're
Yep.
struggling just looking at your profit dial so closely all the time, you're not going to be in this Dr. Thunder maximization business as much, right?
No.
Now, exactly. So all these assume that you're the type of person that can be a monopoly to begin with. In other words, you have value, created a niche, such and such. And to you, you are most deserving of the surplus resources that would be deployed in your discretion towards giving us the things that we don't know that you can give us, right? You can, who knows what new thing you'll develop, blah, blah, blah. So that is an argument, a pro-monopoly argument, just from first principles alone, a non-utilitarian. Is it at the end of the day still utilitarian? Yes, because I think at the end of the day, it's like, oh yeah, you're going to give us something, right? If we let you keep your profits. But I think it works out at the end of the day in that way as well. What are your thoughts about that? Let Dr. Thunder charge what he's going to charge, because he will use it for research development and be able to give you the new innovations and the best of the Dr. Thunder.
Yeah. Yeah, this is touchy. So in one sense, you understand why there are laws against monopolies, especially in certain time period in history of this country in particular. And so for those reasons, I'm not opposed for certain regulation associated with monopoly. But it seems like what we're talking about now is not monopoly proper, but a sort of abstract monopoly, where we're talking about hyper, making your product, making your service is as unique as possible, so that no one else has something that is comparable to it. And that's not exactly the same as monopolies when we talk about it in the proper sense, as it were, right? It's more like make your product, make your service so unique so that it is impossible to replicate. And if something truly is unique, then it cannot be replicated. You can't copy it. Or it'll take a long time to copy, or perhaps it's not necessarily the device that you're selling. Perhaps it is the entire experience that the person has, the service, from A to Z, getting the product into their hand. Perhaps there's some customization or something that they can do. Perhaps there's something that's more streamlined, more enjoyable. Maybe there's a company called Sweetwater, and Sweetwater is been in the business of selling professional electronics, like studio grade electronics, and then anything that you would need for like sound reinforcement and like lighting and stuff that you would need for shows and stuff. And I think they sell computers too, that are computers specifically to be used for that. And one thing that they do is every time you get something from them, there's candy in the box. So oh, I just got my new keyboard, and there's some Tootsie Rolls in there. It's called Sweet Water, right? So they would send candy. Now, that seems like maybe that seems like a gimmick, but I also remember it. And also there's a certain level of customer service and just that you get with them that is kind of like nobody else does that, or nobody else can do it, or whatever it is. So in that sense, I'm in favor, of course, of that idea. I mean, I consider myself to be a monopoly in that way.
Yeah. So monopoly, generally speaking, when one is looking, when the word is used, it's used to look at the pejorative sides of things, such as a government-supported monopoly, regulatory capture, those kinds of things, right? So the argument there that we're giving is almost like an argument, a high to the victor goes the spoils type of value. It's more of a declaration of a value,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
As a saying that this is a value worth pursuing.
Yeah, and more of a declaration of if you took the risk, you should be rewarded.
Yeah, and you probably know Elon Musk is probably better suited to decide what to do with his billions than if he didn't. Yeah, he got his billions and let him figure out how to do his rockets and his whatever, right? So,
Right.
Shout out indeed. So, ladies and gentlemen, there is something that is with regards to watching the market, right? We've talked about the fact that you have to be unique. Okay, you have to find a niche, you have to skill up, you have to specialize such that you're more like a monopoly than in the state of perfect competition. Perfect competition is not good. In the same way why the restaurant business is not good. You trying to be the 17th burger joint in downtown Ohio, right? While trying, the thing with people who are in perfect competition, they're always trying to sound unique. It's like, no, but we're we're the only halal slash Scandinavian burger joint in the. Okay, great.
Goodness.
I guess the market really needed halal Scandinavian burger, right? So the idea is people whom are in this perfect competition area where they're getting slaughtered, they constantly trying to sound like they're more unique, right? Than they actually are. And be wary of that. Generally speaking, if someone's trying to pitch something to you, and it's that they're going into the bar business or restaurant business, but it's oh no, but we make English such and such fresh. It's like no, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't freaking matter. You're in a perfect competition situation. So we've talked about that, but I want to perhaps we can end with looking at how the competition is emerging in the market around you. So you're supplying something, but something came to mind where the answer is, well, someone's turning there are new women turning 18 every day. Point being, there are new people coming into the market every day, new competition. One of these is AI in the space of, let's say, intellectual work, right? Or you may have just that within the market, a whole bunch of engineers that just got laid off from Google and Facebook. Hence, out here in Palo Alto, there's been a huge kind of influx of supply into this pool that I'm in if I'm some engineer out here in Silicon Valley, right? So understanding where is going to be influxes of competition supply-wise is an important thing so that you can be ahead of the curve. So learning new technology, Dr. Thunder, is an important part of asking for more money, right? And creating a protective moat around yourself to keep your value and your money. What are some things that can be said regarding looking into the future, seeing where things are going? What are the new tools? What are the new technology? What are the new ways in which I could be undercut? What are the other services that are doing this thing? How do I innovate from just putting candy in my boxes to maybe adding what? Anyway, go ahead. How does one look at that?
Yeah, this is so we experienced a kind of an interesting it almost seems it almost seems like it's not. Oh, how can I say? It doesn't seem like it goes together. It doesn't seem like it would be the case that when you can't pay people enough almost to be willing to work in the fast food line, you also would be laying, middle management folks off. That seems to, when you think about it, on its surface, it seems to not make sense, because it seems as though AI would be able to more easily replace sort of simple kind of stuff like taking an order or whatever. So it seems like more of those positions would be on the chopping block, and perhaps there's more nuance or something that maybe AI doesn't have worked out yet, that middle management stuff wouldn't have been so susceptible.
Language, the large language models, which is the particular kind of iteration of AI right now that is kind of like the thing, is perfect to eat up your legal and paralegal and knowledge work, right? It is what it does. It does language, right? Very well. So it eats those up. However, it's there's certain kind of regarding just a word on regarding the nuances here of, let's say, taking order and putting orders together. There's certain things that are kind of a little bit complex, such as there are these coffee shops in San Francisco airport that are perfectly automated, where a robot makes it. But there's some simple things like, oh, well, sometimes you have to use this other bag or blah, blah, blah. That just makes it way easier if there's a human being there, right? That just pay this guy $15 an hour. But in language space, no, freaking get this guy to answer the paralegal questions. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. So for those reasons, I mean, when you dig deeper, then it's like, okay, that makes sense. But on the surface, it seems like it's almost puzzling why that would be the case. In the arts, for instance, there's been a lot of concern about, fake art. Well, it's not really fake art, but art that's created by robots, and is it real art, and is that going to take over the market, and are people going to want to start, buying the robots music, and go to the robots concert and stuff? Is that really stuff that is it really going to take over for actual human beings? Now, I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is because I don't think that people are interested in what robots think. And I don't think that, and I think that this whole developing in community is really the thing that social music does. That's what it does. That's what it's about, community. And so I don't know that robot creating music is adding to that. I don't know that people are going to warm up to that. Now, elevator music, sure. Making a quicker pathway towards writing a film score, sure. Okay. But you're still going to have people that are going to be making the decisions on, does this sound good or not? Do I like it or not? You're still going to need to employ musicians, is my point. So I think a lot of folks are fearful of that, and maybe in an irrational way. But you kind of understand why that would be fearful. Okay. One thing I think is interesting is as a music teacher, and in particular as a saxophone professor, as a jazz saxophone professor, I quite literally am recruiting and training my competition. Right? So I recruit them. I say, okay, like this, like that. I said all of these positive things about the part of the country that I live in. That was part of the recruiting process. So we probably won't be surprised if some of them or a lot of them decide that they want to stay in the area, which theoretically over time could make it harder for me to get certain gigs, certain opportunities. But it doesn't seem like it's really had that effect. And the reason that it hasn't is because I have been I'm on an upward mobility thing, right? I'm on a trajectory. I'm heading up. I'm heading in an upward direction, right? And so if I stayed in the same sort of, if I was plateaued this whole time, then I would pretty quickly get to a time period where I couldn't work in the same place that I teach, in the same area, because all these saxophone players I'm recruiting, and a bunch of them are staying around, and a lot of them can probably work for cheaper than I can, right? But that's not what happened. So what's happened is I have been keeping my skill set, keeping, new skills, developing new abilities, capabilities, creating new networks, creating a community around the stuff that I do, all of that kind of stuff, developing relationships. And so that's the stuff that can't be replaced just by skills, just by somebody that knows how to do the same, can press the buttons down. Right. So I think that's that has to be part of the, that has to be part of the conversation. Another thing is we're talking about getting more money. When is it right to ask for more money? When's the right, how and when? As my network has increased in size and as more people know who I am, that also increases my value. And it makes it so that they can't just simply replace me with a younger model. Right? They can't just replace me with a younger model. It's because of all the people that I know. It's because of all of the stuff that I can do. It's all the, all the additional knowledge that I have, and the fact that I haven't allowed myself to be. I'm not outdated. Right? I didn't allow that to happen. I know as much about the technology stuff more than anybody that comes in. Always. It's never going to be different than that. So they'll never be able to say, well, we like you, but you don't know how to do this software, and this is the software that we need to use, or you don't understand the latest technology with respect to creating music, or blah, blah, blah. They'll never be able to say that. So it's interesting. I think in order to keep yourself sort of relevant, continuing to skill up, you said skill up, continuing to, press, look and see what's out there. Don't allow yourself to get in a bubble you can be in a bubble. In other words, you can have a close interaction with people that are within a certain ecosystem, but you have to regularly, intentionally get outside of that bubble. And I'll say that part of the stuff that I do online, part of all of the other kinds of stuff, the fitness stuff that I do, all of the stuff that I do, a lot of that stuff is an attempt to not be in the same ecosystem, in the same bubble. Because I think that's when they got you. That's when they can really jack you up, is and this is one of the reasons. This is one of the reasons. This is kind of long winded. Sorry about that. Um, it's one of the reasons why churches that have worked at in the past. I currently don't have a church gig. I'm looking at something that there might be an opportunity. I may be doing something, but I don't know. But I'm currently don't have a church gig. But in all of the past in my church gigs, one thing that I have said is I'm not interested in membership, in church membership. Okay, this is why. It's not because I don't agree with certain aspects or that I'm going to not be involved. In every church that I've worked at, I've been at least as involved as any of the members, in particular, the members that were musicians in the church, at least as involved, usually more involved. But it wasn't my church. And the reason that I don't do that is because what they can do is they can say, okay, well, we don't want to pay you what we need to pay you, but this is your church. It is your church, so so there's like there's a way to take advantage of that. Also, by not being a member and also by always doing lots of other things, they can never kind of get you in a place where you need them. Like if I don't have you, if I don't have this particular community, I'm going to be lost. They can't get you there. And that is a part of it makes me sad that that so many institutions in general, but churches in particular, so often take advantage of folks in that way that you'd have to protect yourself from them. But it's just human nature. It's just the tendency. It's just what happens. So anyhow, I said a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, but there was a felicitous note regarding the fact that you can always count on on human relevance being there and staying ahead of the curve with regards to technology, that you mentioned earlier. So that part is good, right? You can always be ahead of the curve, and AI is not going to take over everything. People are still going to be looking for you, the human being, and go out there, create yourself, the individuation aspect, taking advantage of your brand. All the way in the beginning, we started out with make a decision, because that is the one that people tend to avoid. How much do you want to get paid? What is this increase you're looking for? What's the number and what's the timeline? Once you put that down, you might start seeing, well, obviously here are the gaps that I need to fill. In other words, have these objectives towards getting to the goal. But I think that it was a good topic, well covered. What's the deal with the dads reacting and stuff?
So we didn't do a show last week, and we're not going to do one tomorrow either, because he's on vacation. It's just it's the summer,
Yep.
But I'll probably still do a show tomorrow night. I like to keep to remind the algorithm to expect something coming from my channel on Thursdays at around that time. Probably do it a little bit earlier. Probably won't be a 10 o'clock or 10:30 show as we've done. It'll probably be a 9:30, or 9 o'clock kind of show. But tomorrow morning I have, I actually put on my community tab as an image of a woman in her car or her truck or something. She drives some sort of service vehicle. I'm not sure. And it's a single woman that's coming after married women, criticizing married women for apparently, saying all of these flowery things about marriage, but then when they file for divorce, then the truth comes out about how miserable they were and all like this. So I'm going to take a look at this video and see what's up with that. That'll be on Car Thunder for tomorrow morning. And although a bunch of these Car Thunders over the last couple months have not been in my car because my schedule has been different, my son is not going to school during the summer, it will be still around the same time, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Be about that time. So I'll be doing that, and then I'm not sure what I'm going to do Thursday. Friday morning will be an open panel, and then of course on Sunday we'll have Case Closed, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It'll be some trending topic, probably something geopolitical, something. We always have something interesting. There's what is it? We've got a couple cases of so somebody is lying about some Me Too stuff. That might end up being the the topic. That's sort of trending. And we also know that there's somebody for being rather rambunctious and loud talking is not returning to the United States anytime soon. So that, I don't know, that could be a topic. We'll see.
We'll see indeed. Shout out to you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. Again, thank you for the super chatters, Bob and Dutty Girl. And next Wednesday on Dr. Thunder's channel, we shall continue the series Getting Ish Done. Always a good time. Until next time, peace. We are out.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what dwells behind the curtain, the face of evil lurking with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannon could breach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, come, make me get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.